The day I was thrown out. I still remember the exact words. My brother stood in the middle of the living room, red with anger, pointing at me like I was a stranger. "You're a parasite clinging to this family." The room went silent. I thought he was joking at first, but then he grabbed my bags and threw them toward the front door. "Go find another host." I looked at my mother. Surely she would stop him. Surely she would say something. Instead, she crossed her arms and looked at me with cold eyes. "Don't come back." 3 words. 3 words that hurt more than anything my brother had said. For years, I had helped this family. I paid bills, covered emergencies, fixed problems nobody else wanted to deal with. But in that moment, none of it mattered. I stood there holding my bags while the people I loved acted as if I was the burden. The funny thing? They had no idea what was about to happen. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I simply picked up my bags, walked out the door, and drove away. And before I went to sleep that night, I made one quiet decision. A decision that would change everything by sunrise. Most families have one person who quietly keeps everything running. In mine, that person was me. Years earlier, my father had gotten sick. When the bills started piling up, I stepped in. I opened utility accounts under my name. Internet, electricity, water, even the security system. It was supposed to be temporary, but temporary turned into years. Every month I handled payments. Whenever my brother forgot his share, I covered it. Whenever mom was short on cash, I filled the gap. Nobody thanked me. Nobody noticed. As long as everything worked, they assumed it would continue forever. Over time, I became invisible. Not because I did nothing, because I did too much. People get used to help, and eventually, they start believing they deserve it. That was exactly what happened. My brother especially loved acting like he owned the house. He spoke loudly, made decisions, treated everyone like employees. And because I hated conflict, I usually stayed quiet. But silence has limits. That night, after being humiliated and thrown out, I opened my laptop. I stared at every account connected to my name. Then I started making calls. One after another. Calmly. Professionally. No anger. No yelling. Just paperwork. By midnight, everything was scheduled. And by morning, reality was about to arrive. 3. The call at 7:30 a.m. I was drinking coffee in a small motel room when my phone exploded with notifications. 20 missed calls. Then 30. Then 40. Most were from my brother. Finally, I answered. The second I picked up, he screamed, "What have you done?" I smiled. "What are you talking about? The power is gone." I took another sip of coffee. "Oh, the internet is down too." "Really?" "And the security system stopped working." For a moment, he sounded genuinely panicked. I could hear my mother yelling in the background. Then he finally understood. "You shut everything off." "No," I replied calmly. "I canceled services under my name." Silence. Then more yelling. "You can't do that." Actually, I could. And I had. The accounts belonged to me. The payments came from me. The responsibility was mine. If I was no longer family, then why should I keep acting like family? For the first time, my brother had no clever response. Only anger. But anger doesn't restore electricity. Anger doesn't pay bills. And anger certainly doesn't solve problems. When he finally hung up, I leaned back in my chair. For years, they had underestimated my value. Now, they were finally learning it. The truth starts coming out. The next few days were chaos. Relatives started calling. At first, I assumed they wanted to criticize me. Instead, many wanted answers. Apparently, my brother had told everyone I was lazy, that I lived off the family, that I contributed nothing. The story spread quickly. Unfortunately for him, facts spread faster. Several relatives already knew the truth. They knew who paid bills. They knew who handled emergencies. They knew who spent years helping. Once people started comparing stories, the cracks appeared. The questions turned into doubts. Doubts turned into suspicion. Soon everyone was asking the same thing. If I was the parasite, why were all the important accounts under my name? Why did the family suddenly struggle the moment I left? The answers were obvious. My brother's version of events started falling apart. Meanwhile, I stayed quiet. I wasn't trying to destroy him. I wasn't posting online. I wasn't arguing. I simply let reality speak for itself. Sometimes revenge isn't about attacking someone. Sometimes it's about stepping aside and letting them face consequences they created themselves. And consequences were arriving fast. Very fast. A week later, my mother called. Unlike my brother, she wasn't yelling. She sounded exhausted. "Can we talk?" I agreed. We met at a small restaurant. For a few minutes, neither of us spoke. Then she sighed. "I didn't realize how much you handled." There it was. The first honest sentence I had heard in years. Apparently, after I left, unpaid expenses started appearing everywhere. Late fees, deposits, reconnection charges, maintenance costs. Things nobody noticed when I quietly took care of them. My brother tried fixing everything himself. That lasted about 3 days. Soon he was calling companies, arguing with customer service, complaining about fees, blaming everyone except himself. The more responsibilities landed on his shoulders, the more frustrated he became. For years he had mocked my role. Now he was living it, and he hated every second. Mom looked embarrassed. "Maybe we judged you unfairly." Maybe. But the damage had already been done. The problem wasn't the bills. The problem was respect. And once respect disappears, rebuilding it becomes difficult. Just when I thought things couldn't get worse for him, they did. One evening, a cousin called me. "Have you heard?" "Heard what?" "Your brother lost his job." I was stunned. Apparently, all the stress had followed him to work. He started missing deadlines, showing up late, arguing with coworkers. Eventually, management had enough. He wasn't fired because of me. He was fired because he couldn't handle pressure. The same pressure he had dumped onto others for years. When I heard the news, I felt something unexpected. Not happiness, not satisfaction, just sadness. This was my brother. Despite everything, I never wanted his life to fall apart. I simply wanted him to understand how much damage his words had caused. But life has a strange way of teaching lessons. Sometimes the lesson arrives gently. Sometimes it arrives like a storm. For my brother, it was definitely a storm. And it was far from over. 2 months later, I received another call. This time it wasn't my mother. It wasn't a cousin. It was my brother. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then he said something I never expected. I was wrong. Just like that. No excuses. No blaming. No defending himself. "I thought you needed us." He paused. "But it turns out we needed you." The anger I'd carried for weeks started fading. Not disappearing, but fading. Because deep down, that was all I ever wanted. Acknowledgement. Recognition. Truth. He admitted he had been arrogant. Admitted he took me for granted. Admitted he convinced himself that helping wasn't real work. By the end of the conversation, neither of us were the same people who stood in that living room months earlier. Pain changes people. Consequences change people. And sometimes humility changes them most of all. Today, things are different. Not perfect, but better. My brother and I slowly rebuilt our relationship. My mother apologized too. Trust took time. But eventually, we found common ground. Looking back, the most important thing wasn't revenge. It was self-respect. The moment I stopped allowing people to treat me like I had no value, everything changed. Many people stay in toxic situations because they're afraid of walking away. They're afraid others won't survive without them. But sometimes walking away reveals the truth. Sometimes it shows people exactly what you were worth all along. My brother called me a parasite. He threw me out. He told me never to come back. Yet less than 24 hours later, he was calling in panic. Not because I attacked him. Not because I got even. But because he finally experienced life without the person he had taken for granted. And that's the lesson. Never confuse kindness with weakness. Never mistake silence for worthlessness. And never underestimate the person quietly holding everything together. Because when they finally leave, that's when the real panic begins.